Just because you do not have a common trait of autism does not mean that you are not autistic. In this video, I'm going to share 15 misconceptions about autism you need to stop believing, and you need to stop believing right now. So let's get started. Hey, Define Yourselfer. I am the Confident Autistic. I'm an autistic adult, late diagnosed. Here on my YouTube channel, I share videos that will help you understand autism and build the confidence necessary to live life confidently autistic. Now, if this resonates with you, please subscribe to this channel. And don't forget to ring the bell to be notified of new videos and when I go live for my weekly Q&A live stream. Many adults who start to suspect that they are on the spectrum start doubting themselves. And this actually happened to me when I started going through the phase of suspecting I was on the spectrum. And this occurred for many adults, including myself, because we do not have all the traits. And I thought I did not have all the traits of autism that I had heard about. Well, the truth is, according to the National Autistic Society, only the core characteristics of autism must be present for a diagnosis to be made, indicating that you do not need to exhibit all the traits and characteristics of autism to be either diagnosed or self-identify as autistic. Like I mentioned earlier, here are 15 misconceptions about autism. People who suspect they're on the spectrum say, and the truth that you need to know. And when they say these things, this is what puts confusion and doubt and skepticism in their mind, leading to some people to experience imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is, I feel I'm autistic, or I'm identifying as autistic, and maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm being a fake or a poser. So let's get into these 15 misconceptions and start finding out the truth about them. The first one is, I can't be autistic because I can make eye contact. And this is one thing I kind of struggle with a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Because the truth is this, that many people can make eye contact. And I can make eye contact. But when I do, it feels very uncomfortable. It is exhausting. And it is unnatural. And for some people, it can be any of those three. For me, it's all three. Now, it is important to know that there are some people who are autistic and can make eye contact because they've trained themselves to make eye contact without realizing they were masking their autism when they're interacting with somebody who is more than likely not on the spectrum. Now, the second trait, or misconception, I should say, that is common, that causes us to doubt who we are as autistic adults is, we may say something like, I have friends and relationships, so I can't be autistic. The truth is, autistic people can and do form deep friendships and romantic relationships. I can attest to this. I'm married. I've been with my wife. We've been together 25 years, 25-year deep friendship, shared a lot with each other. And for the last 22 years, we've been married. So it is possible. And that does not mean I'm not autistic. It just means I'm able to do this. Because as I said in other videos, I'm going to say here, and you're going to hear me say in other videos in the future, every one of us experiences autism differently. There's no one size fits all approach to autism. Maybe you're saying to yourself, autistic people lack empathy, and you know that you are very empathetic, or you at least have empathy for people. Well, the truth is, many autistic people do experience empathy. In fact, they experience hyper empathy. And hyper empathy is when you feel emotions so intensely that you struggle to process or express them. The challenge is often in reading social expectations on how to respond, not in actually feeling emotions. So this basically means you have the emotions, you feel them, but you don't know, or how to express them and share them in a way that's going to be considered, and I hate this word, but it's true, normal. I hate that word. It's maybe better put by how other people who are not on the spectrum express their emotions. And maybe you're really emotionally upset or sad that somebody in your family has lost some mobility, and most people in the family of this, they come across as being, man, I'm really bummed. I'm sorry to hear that. And some of them would be judgmental, which I don't think is the right idea. But hey, I can't tell anyone how to live their life, so I'm not going to. But you, on the other hand, may want to have a breakdown crying fit. And that's because you're hyper empathetic. And that's okay. That's okay. Remember, we all experience autism differently. Another common thing that people who suspect they're on the spectrum will say, which causes them to kind of think, maybe I'm not autistic, is I wasn't diagnosed autistic as a child, so I can't be autistic now. Well, the truth is, autism diagnoses were hysterically biased towards young boys who showed obvious traits. Many adults, especially women, non binary individuals, and those with internalized traits, can go undiagnosed for years or decades. Now, I will speak on my behalf here, and people of my age and my generation, that when I was a child in the 1970s, I probably got missed for being diagnosed. Because what we know about autism today is much more vast and wider. We have a better understanding of autism than we did 50 years ago. So if I was to be screened today by today's standards back in 1970s, I more than likely would have been diagnosed autistic. You know, that's part of it. It's because we've learned more about autism. Does not mean that you acquired it late in life. You were either born with it or you weren't. Okay, been with your entire life. You don't catch autism. You don't develop it later in life. It just basically means you weren't tested as a child, or what we knew about autism back in your childhood is not what we know today. We've learned so much about autism in the past, I would say 20, 30 years in particular. That's just my opinion. And that we can better diagnose people who are on the spectrum. Now, another thing that you may be saying to yourself that's causing you some internal conflict of whether you're on the spectrum or not is, I don't have a superpower like in the movies, like Rain Man, so I cannot be autistic. The truth is that not all autistic people have savant abilities. An example of savant abilities is photographic memory, advanced math skills, etc. Many autistic adults have deep special interests or unique thinking patterns, but autism is a spectrum with diverse experiences. Now, I do not have super math skills, okay, which frustrated the heck out of my dad. My dad was a mechanical engineer, and he was always puzzled why I did not inherit the ability to quickly do math as he did. Now, I do have somewhat of a math skill that I'm kind of proud of. That you give me a date anywhere from 1901 through 2099 and give me about 60 seconds, maybe 90, but most of the time less than a minute, I can tell you what day of the week that day fell on. So I'm pretty proud of that. And for me, my photographic memory, I and I know I talked about this, I believe I talked about it in other videos. If I haven't, I probably will. Because I'll be honest, sometimes these are taped out of sequence and I get mixed up. I we can have super strong or super good memories, and they can be associated with visual. Like, I can remember on March 15th, 1975, it was a Saturday, and I was going to go into the hospital for heart surgery. I was in third grade. And before I went to the hospital with my mom and my brother and my dad dropping me off, getting me checked in, my dad and I, just ourselves, went to a McDonald's in St. Louis. That's where I grew up, in the St. Louis metro area. I remember the layout of the restaurant. The counter, I was standing at the counter off to my right and a little bit, not directly to my right, but right and up a little bit, was a door that we came in, and I could see light coming through it, and it was an overcast day. And I remember this was one of the first times I was tall enough to see over the counter. And my dad ordered the food and all, and the lady brought the food and everything to us. And she said, "Anything else I can do for you?" And my dad said, "Yeah, you can let us pay for the meal." And I can remember that day. And I did some research and, into St. Louis weather history, and it was overcast that day. It was cloudy, overcast day. And so when I remember something that happened in the past, more often than not, as I'm describing it to people, I could see it in my mind. So it's kind of a fascinating thing. But remember, not all autistic people have savant abilities like photographic memory, which I believe I just described there, or advanced math skills, which I may have touched upon that a little bit. Uh, but we may have deep special interests and unique thinking patterns. And autism is a spectrum. So if you don't have that, don't worry about it. You still may be on the spectrum. Another thing that autistic people or those who suspect they're autistic might say, and because they're maybe in denial about, am I really autistic? I don't know if I really want to, be with it because of the stigma, whatever, and you're trying to talk yourself out of it, or having second thoughts or imposter syndrome. Some of us may say autistic people don't like being touched or like socializing. Now, the truth is, there are some autistic people who love hugs, cuddling, and social interaction, but on their own terms and in ways that make them feel comfortable. Sensory sensitivities vary from person to person. Now, in my case in particular, I don't mind hugs and I don't mind cuddling. But like I just told you the truth, it's on my terms. I really don't like being touched by people in public, okay? I don't. And I don't like being hugged by people without them asking first. Most of the time I'll say yes. But I don't like that too much. But I do love hugs and I do love cuddling. You can ask my wife. I do love that. And social interaction is very challenging for me. And it is better, excuse me for yawning. It is better if it's on my terms. Like if I go to an event and I'm leading the conversation, I do better if I have that control of the conversation. If I'm just a participant, it's very uncomfortable for me. And the way that I do good with social interactions is I interact, and this is probably a form of masking. I interact by kind of like being a host of a late night talk show and doing it like interview style, like you would on TV, and kind of goofing around a little bit, mainly because that helps me regulate myself and feel comfortable in social interactions. Otherwise, I really get clammed up, and I can get really rude and become being defensive because I'm very uncomfortable in a situation. Another thing that we may say to ourselves to kind of debate and say, well, I can't be autistic, or I'm an imposter, is this: I'm too verbal or expressive to be autistic. Well, the truth is, autism affects communication in different ways for each person. Some autistic people struggle with verbal speech, while others talk a lot, but may have trouble with social reciprocity, tone, or processing a conversation. Now, I myself am verbal, as you can tell, very verbal. I'm very expressive. Because one thing I fell in love with when I was young was television and radio, especially morning radio. And that is the way I learned how to interact with people, by imitating morning radio shows, or my favorite late night show was David Letterman, by learning how to interact with people that way and doing interviews. That's how I do that. And I know for morning radio and Letterman and all, because it's comedy, there's a lot of expression in your voice, vocal variety, and you want to be funny, you got to be verbal. So this is why I am the way I am, and because I fed myself that, I craved that, I used it as a teaching tool. So that's why I am. But yet I'm still on the spectrum. So if you think you're verbal or too verbal, or you have too much expression to be autistic, because a stereotype and stereotypes are often wrong, that everyone who is autistic speaks in a very monotone voice with very little emotion, even when they are happy. Even if I am happy, my tone of voice would not change. Now, I'm not mocking anyone. Please don't think that, okay? But I'm using that as an example to give to you that there's a stereotype of that. And when we hear this stereotype, and we look at ourselves and say, look, I'm too verbal. I have too much expression in my voice. I can't be autistic. You're wrong, because that's a stereotype. And that because autism affects communication differently in every single person. So just because you do not have a monotone voice does not mean you're not on the spectrum. Now, another thing that we will say when we are, going through the period of our life, self-identifying or self-accepting that we may be on the spectrum or that we are on the spectrum is all autistic people are either geniuses or have intellectual disabilities. So we think of people who are autistic on one end of the spectrum or the other. They either, hey, they are rocket scientists or they make Jethro Bodine from the Beverly Hillbillies, I know that's a dated reference, look like a genius. Okay, one of the two. But no, that's not true. Let's dive into truth here. Truth is, the majority of autistic people fall within the average range of intelligence. Some have intellectual disabilities, and some have high intelligence. But autism itself isn't about IQ, it's about how the brain processes information. And that includes how we process the information we're gathering, which leads us to how we process the world and interact with others, etc., etc. Now, we kind of touched on this one a little bit earlier, but this is something that people who suspect they're on the spectrum may think of, may say to themselves and think, I can't be autistic because of this. Because they're saying to themselves, autism is just a childhood condition. Now, I know I touched upon this a little bit earlier, but I do want to just reiterate this because this is an important fact. The truth is, autism is a lifelong neurotype. Many autistic adults go undiagnosed because they learn to mask their traits to survive in a neurotypical world. So just because you weren't diagnosed as autistic as a child, and I know I talked about this earlier, does not mean you're not autistic. We talked about some of the reasons why you may have been missed as a child. So it didn't just happen overnight. You've always been autistic. Now you just maybe realizing it and receiving confirmation on that, and that's okay. Now, the 10th thing we say to ourselves, and the 10th misconception we repeat to ourselves in our mind that causes us to question if we're really autistic or if we're a poser, is this. We will say to ourselves, I can't be autistic because I have emotions and a sense of humor. Now, the truth is, autistic people experience joy. We experience love. We experience humor. And we experience sarcasm. Now, though we may process or express those qualities like joy, love, humor, and sarcasm differently, many autistic people like you and me have a unique or dry sense of humor. And if you hang around me a lot, you're going to say, yes, he has a very unique, dry sense of humor. My mother-in-law, God rest her soul, she passed away, would call me and my wife, even when we were dating, me and my girlfriend, me and my fiance would call us, and we'd be driving, and she would say, "Are you on the road?" Because she knew it was dangerous to talk on the phone while you're driving a car. Now I don't drive, but she always asked me this question. I said, "No, no, Rhonda, I'm not on the road. The car is on the road. I'm in the car," and she loved that. So yeah, I have a very unique way of seeing things. And I believe that's from my autism, and I take things literally. So I have this unique or dry sense of humor. I've been accused of being British because I'm also blunt. I mean, my wife has said to me the other day, we talked about this before, never ask somebody who is neurodivergent how they feel about you because they will tell you the truth unfiltered. And that's true. I won't. But yeah, I can experience joy, love, and humor and sarcasm. I do it differently. Now, I talked about this in other videos. and maybe you can relate to this. I don't know. If you do, share in the comments. If it's morning radio or if it's on television or a movie, 9 out of 10 times I can catch the sarcasm. In real life, sarcasm goes right over my head 9 out of 10 times. And it would really help me if somebody in real life is around me and being sarcastic, just say bazinga, like they did on The Big Bang Theory, to help me identify when that was sarcasm, because I miss a lot of sarcasm in everyday life. Not on TV, not in movies, not on morning radio, but in everyday life, I miss sarcasm. But yet, sarcasm is one of my really great gifts. I can be very sarcastic, but when you be sarcastic with me, I miss it. I just don't get it. It's weird. But it's okay. It's part of my uniqueness as being an autistic adult, and I embrace it. Another thing that you may be saying to yourself that's causing you some question if you really are on the spectrum or not, or causing you to feel like, am I an imposter? Is this: I can't be autistic because I'm not good at math or computers. Well, we talked about math a little bit earlier, but let's dive into this a little bit more. The truth is that while some autistic people excel in STEM, autistic people exist in every career, from artists and musicians to teachers and writers. So that does not define you. If you're not great at math or computers or anything else that you think stereotypical for an autistic person, does not mean you're not on the spectrum. It just means that you may be in the spectrum and you experience the spectrum and autism differently. And that's okay. There's no one definition, one size fit all for people who are autistic. So don't look for one. Autism is something that needs to be fixed. Now, this is a common thing people say, not so much within the autism community, but those outside the community and those who are going through the process of self-identifying or suspecting they're autistic. Because a lot of people look at it as something that needs to be cured, needs to be fixed. And in our community, that is often extremely offensive. Now, the truth is, and I'll explain why it's really offensive in a moment, but the truth is that autism isn't a disease or disorder to be cured. It is a neurotype, meaning an inherently different way of experiencing the world. Acceptance and accommodation actually help autistic people thrive instead of trying to fix us. My wife and I had a conversation about this a few days ago. It was a nice conversation. And we talked about, finding a cure, the stigma, people saying, well, we had a cure. We got to find a cure for autism. And I thought, and I speak for myself, but I would not be surprised if others on the spectrum feel the same way. And if you do, share in the comments. I would love to know if there's others who feel this way. I told my wife, if tomorrow morning I woke up, let's say they have surgery, whatever, they gave me a pill, and tomorrow morning I woke up and my autism was gone, I would not have a clue how to function in the world. Because even though my autism allows me to view the world differently, see the world differently, interpret it differently, I've gotten used to that. And you take that away from me, I'm going to be lost. So please, I don't want a cure. Okay. I just don't. Okay. I don't want a cure for it. You'll be taking away everything I know, and I would be totally lost and not know how to survive in this world. So, speaking for myself, I don't want it cured. I don't want it taken away. Additionally, one of the things that we say to ourselves when we're going through the time of suspecting we're autistic or self identifying as autistic that causes us to question if we're really autistic or causes us to feel like we're a poser is, I'm just being dramatic about sensory issues. Well, the truth is, sensory sensitivity, and this can be sensitivity to light, sound, textures, etc., are real neurological responses. You're not overreacting. Your brain processes stimuli differently. Now, I'm very fortunate because my wife, we did not know I was autistic before we got married early in my life. We just learned this over the last year. And my wife, she knows I would not lie to her. And she knows when I tell her too much noise bothers me. Too much light bothers me. We were at the hospital yesterday. I had a family member. I had to have the emergency. So I'm sitting in the emergency room with a whole bunch of light for like 6 hours. It's like, I wish I had some sunglasses because all that bright light and everything was overstimulating to me. And there's nothing wrong with me. It's real. You're not making this up. You're not being a drama queen or anything. We really do process sensory input differently. So don't doubt yourself in there. Don't say you're being overly dramatic or you're doing this for attention. If someone's telling you you're doing it for attention, they don't know what it's like. They're not really being supportive of you. I'm not going to tell you to unfriend them or anything. That's your decision and not my place to tell you to do that. But you want to be surrounded with people who support you and believe in you. So and will be there for you. But that's just my opinion. Now, we got two more left. We'll have this bad boy wrapped up. So let's get to them. Another thing that we say to ourselves when we're going through that period of adapting or accepting a potential that we're autistic is, I've been able to function this long, so I don't need a diagnosis. Now, the truth is, many late diagnosed autistic adults struggle in silence for years, in my case, decades, before realizing why life feels harder than it should. And now, a diagnosis or a self identification that you're autistic can help you understand yourself, find accommodations, and embrace who you truly are. So maybe you don't need that late diagnosis for anything more than self-identity purposes, and because of the barriers there, you may not want to go for one. So you may just do, I'm going to self-identify. Once you really feel comfortable with it, that's fine. But for me, going through this process, which I did, from suspecting I was autistic to receiving confirmation of my belief or suspicions that I'm on the spectrum, have been a revolution in my life. It's helped me make sense of my life in the past and going forward. It's been one of the best things I've done in my life, and it's made me a whole, complete person. Because all my life I always trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Why am I doing these weird things? Why can't I handle things like other people? Why does noise bother me? Why does light bother me? Why can't I make eye contact? And the list goes on and on and on. And now that I realize I'm on the spectrum, I continue to learn about it and I share what I learned with you guys through the channel and other methods. I now like myself more than I ever did before. And I truly accept me for who I am. So I really do strongly encourage you, no matter how far you want to go in the process, whether you just want to stop at self-identifying or go all the way for a diagnosis, I support you in that. I think it would be the best thing that can happen to you. And if you go all the way and you find out you're not in the spectrum, it gives you closure and you don't sit there the rest of your life wondering, well, am I or am I not? Yeah, it could hurt a little bit, but it will give you some closure. Now, the last of our 15 misconceptions we may tell ourselves that cause us to doubt if we're on the spectrum or to feel like we are imposters or in imposter syndrome is this. If I accept I'm autistic, it would change who I am. Now, as I mentioned in the previous one, it'll change how I felt about myself, and I like myself more, I'm happier. But will it change who I am? Well, the truth is, you have always been autistic. It's just that now you have a framework for understanding yourself better. Embracing autism can free you from masking and help you live more authentically. Breaking free from these myths can be a huge step towards self acceptance and confidence. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. This is not just something I'm reading off my screen, which it is, but if more than that, I really believe that. Now, which ones in this list surprise you the most? Now it's your turn. Tell me which one surprised you the most. Which one of my experiences that I shared in this video resonated with you the most? Which one on that list did I share that now is helping you accept that you may be autistic or accept or start self-identifying as autistic? Share your comments in the video. I would love to hear what you are thinking. Until next time, this is the Confident Autistic, aka Chris Mitchell, reminding you that I'm always here to help you live life confidently autistic.